The highly anticipated start for the 2023 San Diego Padres season is a total nightmare. My gosh, losing 7-2 to the Colorado Rockies of all people. We're going to be going over what went wrong in this overreaction emporium of an episode. Blake Snell's start, some defensive miscues, Cron being the hash-slinging murderer of the San Diego Padres, and much, much more. You know what you're listening to? Let's get started.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Friday, March 31st. As always, I'm your host with sometimes, occasionally, but certainly not always the most, similar to the Padres last night, Javier Reyes. You can follow me on Twitter at Javipeno, Javiipeno, or at LO_Padres. Which is where you can get all my live tweets during the games. I was a monster on the Twitter last night, but you could also check out my personal account if you want to see all the nerdy stuff outside of baseball I tweet about. Thank you for making Locked On Padres your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Check out the Tatis bobblehead in the description of the podcast. Just Baseball, great website that I write for. They have the hoodie you can get there too. Look, opening day pod. Let's get into it, man. All right, so first of all, I just want to say happy opening day, everybody. You know what I mean? Last year, I started off because the Padres lost in a similarly, although differently in a lot of ways, especially in terms of the players and the actual score, in a similarly, pretty hilarious loss. Last year, for those who don't remember, it was Robert Suarez, his debut for the league. 30-year-old rookie. He comes in for the save opportunity because they did not have Drew Pomeranz. They didn't have their firm closer to start the season. And last year it was Taylor Rogers, and he blows the save. He gives up 2 walks, then gives up a huge home run, and then that's it, right? And I was actually laughing maniacally when it happened. You can ask my mom. She's the only witness, but that's what happened there. And for this game, I was laughing, although not as maniacally as last year, because last year was only in the last inning. This game ends by a score of 7-2. The Padres are now 17-23 against the Rockies since the start of the 2021 season. Which is weird considering that the Rockies have basically been the brunt of everyone's jokes in baseball. It's them, it's the A's, it's the Tigers, it's those type of teams, the Nationals to a small degree. And they come out and they start off looking okay, right? Blake Snell, he does get into a little bit of trouble in the first inning, giving up some hits to Chris Bryant, including a double. And by the way, talked with Paul Holden on the previous episode about Chris Bryant. No idea why everyone's just completely forgetting that he exists. I'm not saying he's going to impact things in a way that he's going to take the Rockies to the playoffs, but everyone's just completely forgetting that dude, when he's healthy, is a great, great batter. And they bring in a run. Blake Snell on the day. I think a lot of people were probably expecting him to shove, and he sort of did in his own way. It was a very Blake Snell line. He gives up 3 earned runs on 6 hits, but only walks 1, and he struck out 9. I actually think he looked okay. For the most part. And you have to remember that Blake Snell, for the past couple years, and I am to blame for this too, I definitely overreacted, that he's been really poor to start things. He starts off the season poorly, and by comparison to his previous outings to start off the season, it wasn't too bad. Put away pitches looked great. He actually threw his changeup a little bit more as a put away pitch in a couple of at-bats, which was interesting, but mostly was just almost entirely fastball in this one. 65 fastballs in total, so that's 70% of his pitches were fastballs. There wasn't anything crazy, no giant vertical movement or anything nerdy like that, but I did like that he was, experimenting with the changeup. Curveball was a little bit all over the place at points, but for the most part, he was generating whiffs, which is what I liked. And like I said, 9 strikeouts on the day. Just good stuff in terms of that part. Does need to work on the fastball location. It got a little bit wild at points, and that's what happens with Snell sometimes. But 4 1/3, it's very much a Snell night, right? And also, not to mention, 2 of those runs come actually, or was it one of those runs? Nabil Crismack comes in and gives up a huge home run to CJ Cron, who is just the ultimate hash-slinging slasher, serpent of death, Grim Reaper for the San Diego Padres. Just absolutely kills in this game. Home run, to be specific. He goes, let's see here. He goes 4 for 5 in this game with 5 RBIs and 2 home runs in this game for CJ Cron. Not a bad player, but it is insane how this guy just becomes Barry Bonds against the Padres, and how in general the Rockies team becomes the Justice League when they play the Padres, and it is frustrating. Like I said, 17-23. For a team as good and talented as the Padres, I'm not saying that they should be winning every game. It's just not how baseball works. But to have a 6-game under 500 record against them over these past couple years that have featured some highly anticipated teams is frankly just kind of embarrassing. And they got to figure that out. Again, I don't know why they do this against the Rockies. They're not a useless team, don't get me wrong. But it is, again, it's really embarrassing. But overall, I don't think Snell did anything that freaked me out. I don't think there's anything to really freak out about there. Again, he's a slow starter. I hope that he gets to that Snellzilla form sooner rather than later, though, because this Padres team, a big fear for it is, hey, rotation depth, and we want to have Blake Snell start off pretty strong to ease the concerns of that, especially with Joe Musgrove currently on the IL. So not a great thing there, for sure. But, it was rough, and it was interesting. I think just some non-statistical observations of mine. People were booing at points, specifically when Domingo Tapia came into the game and gave up 2 shots, just a home run to CJ Cron and then a home run to Elujuris Montero. Hopefully I said that name correctly. Apologies if not. Which was unfortunate. I felt bad for the guy. He had been doing okay in spring. I haven't talked about him as much, but there was a great tweet by Jeff Sanders of the Tribune that was basically like those 8th inning wonders in spring training that we've seen, that it's alluding to, that kind of the guys who perform well out of the pen there, that's not necessarily a good indicator, because those parts of spring training just seem to be when people are just relaxed or something like that. I don't know exactly, but that's a good point here. And Domingo Tapia. I live on the East Coast. Domingo Germán pitches for the Yankees. My apologies. Gets absolutely killed here. And same thing for Nabil Crismatt. The overreaction here, like I said, overreaction emporium episode today, would be that the Padres bullpen is going to be in a lot of trouble. Drew Pomeranz suffering a setback. We don't know when he's going to get back. It was when I heard that, I kind of immediately was like, whatever we get from him is gravy at this point. When he pitches, great, but otherwise, he just can't stay on the field, which is unfortunate. And then you have Robert Suarez on the IL, who I talked about at the beginning of his inauspicious start to his career that ended up, really good for the Padres, and they extended him. And you've got Josh Hader, who hopefully is going to be electric. I have hope in Steven Wilson. He makes an appearance in this game, 1 inning, 2 hits, no walks, but 2 strikeouts. He's a guy that can step up. I really do believe in him, and I think Tim Hill can be a specialist. So I'm not going to freak out about the bullpen, but given those 2 injuries, it is worth pointing out that there could be some issues here, and maybe Tapia was just a spring training wonder. But still, that's not the only thing that happened in this game, and the pitching isn't the only thing that was dreadful for the Padres. Again, Chris Bryant, CJ Cron are fine players. Charlie Blackmon somehow, at this point in his career, at a DH spot, goes 3 for 5 in this game with a double. Again, we're the only team that makes Charlie Blackmon look like 2015 Charlie Blackmon. You know what I mean? Like, that's what's kind of crazy about that guy. It's kind of crazy that he's still in the league. Good for him, I guess, but it's kind of crazy. Just really messy stuff there. But before we talk about the rest of the stuff that I thought was interesting in this game, and a little bit of the good side, a little bit of the good news, before we get into that, guys, let me talk to you for 1 second about the lovely folks over at Game Time. Oh, yeah, not the ad that you thought I was going to give, did you? No. I bet you didn't think that. Look, buying tickets to your favorite events, they should not be stressful. Ladies and gentlemen, Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, comedy, and theater performances near you. Look, including theater. That's right. It could be theater stuff, And this isn't a snobby thing. Whatever you're into, go off, and Game Time can help you out. And I know that for me, in the very few times that I've had to wait on friends, usually buying tickets and whatnot, it can be really frustrating, right? But with killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best prices guaranteed, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you will have. That's right, guys. Browse through the app and just, whatever you want. I'm not a big concert guy, But I do look at some stuff. I might be going to some WNBA games later this summer because they're by me, in the Barclays Center in Jersey, which is great. Going to be excited for that. Definitely going to try and get some Padres games. I've already planned to go to the games against the Mets, which is really exciting. For those who don't know, I live on the East Coast. That's why. And against the Yankees, I already have a ticket, so I'm very excited for that. But they've got all sorts of stuff. They've got flash deals and last-minute tickets, and it's easy to find them, which is very important. And you can, see the seat views. You know what I'm saying? Like, not just literally like that top bird's eye view, but like you can see what it would look like. That's really cool. Lowest price is guaranteed, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, and etc. So forget planning months in advance, ladies and gentlemen. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Check it out, guys. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. That's right. Just for listening to this podcast, I give you a deal. Don't say I never did anything for you. Hold on. Don't say I never did anything for you. I almost messed that up. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Game Time app. Good stuff from the folks over at Game Time, ladies and gentlemen. Love it. Absolutely love it. Let's keep it moving. Let's keep talking about this opening day game that was really, really dreadful. And I want to address one thing, is that I did see some of the Padres fans sort of losing their mind a little bit, right? I saw some fans, they were booing in the stadium and all that. And look, it's game one, and I'm not going to freak out and make this a giant indictment of the Padres fan base, but it's game one of 162. I know this is the Overreaction Emporium podcast, but even still, you shouldn't be booing the guys. They're trying, and you can tell that they were trying. They're amped for this season. You saw all the guys at the Fan Fest, right? It's really good stuff. But I understand that given all of the hype, for you to once again come out flat against the poor Rockies team, at least the boos were somewhat justified. This isn't like, the Yankee fans when Giancarlo Stanton, his first game at Yankee Stadium, he strikes out twice and they're booing him, right? It's nothing like that. It's like, hey, there's a lot of hype built up into this, and you have a lot of weird things that happen in this game. On top of the CJ Cron stuff, there was a lot of defensive miscues. And this is something that I've been talking about, again, Overreaction Emporium, been talking about for a good portion of the offseason, which is just the amount, not just roster turnover, but the amount of Padres playing different positions, right? Aside from Xander Bogaerts, Manny Machado, and either Austin Nola or Luis Campusano, Nola got the start last night, and then Trent Grisham, a lot of different positional stuff. When Fernando Tatis Jr. comes back, he's playing in the outfield. That's a new thing for him for the most part, right? I know he's had experience. The end of 2021, he played there. I get it. Juan Soto, he was in right field. He's in left now. Jake Cronenworth, he's at second. He's at first base now. Ha-Seong Kim, he's at shortstop last year. He moves to second base this year. So those are a lot of different changes and whatnot. And it's worth putting it out there for sure. And I think that while it's easy to just look at the top of this Padres lineup, especially when Tatis gets back, and just be absolutely, just quite frankly, thrilled and just be really excited. This is what can sort of happen sometimes, right? Where some guys might make some mistakes. And you saw that in this game. Ha-Seong Kim makes a routine grounder mistake. That was costly, and it ended up allowing some extra runners for Blake Snell. Thankfully, he struck them out and kind of put that to rest. But even still, that was unfortunate, right? To see, for sure. And then you have an error from Juan Soto, which I don't know if it was scored as an error. I have to see in the plays as I scroll through. I don't know if it was scored as an error, the Juan Soto thing, but basically he let a ball drop that it looked like he probably should have gotten to, but he didn't. And that's unfortunate. And remember, I talked about this a lot. The one thing that's going to prevent Juan Soto from potentially being the MVP is his porous defense. Bottom first percentile on outs above average last year. Good stat for measuring defense. And then the previous year, he was in like the 90th percentile. So I'm hoping there's a positive regression to the mean coming. But a pretty poor start for him in that department. Just letting a ball drop in that shouldn't ever have gotten in, right? And that happens. There's this play with Chris Bryant later on in the game. Thankfully, Soto gets the ball in a little bit quicker. But that's a concern for Juan Soto, is the defense. So you have the Ha-Seong Kim error. David Dahl lets a little blooper get in there. It looks like he hesitated too. David Dahl making the starting lineup. Happy for him. That's cool. Against his former team. That's cool. But, a defensive miscue. And I think, again, that is one thing that I would take away from this game. It is something that I'm worried about. Aside from Manny, aside from Grisham and Nola, and Bogaerts, that's a problem. And Bogaerts, by the way, in fairness, I know he had a good defensive season last year, but for the majority of his career, he's been poor. So there's a lot of questions and possibilities of this going very wrong defensively for the Padres if there was an overreaction for me to have from this first game. So that's not great. That's not great whatsoever. I think that, again, this is just really rough. It is a very unfortunate way to start the season. And even Trent Grisham, his first at bat, he actually drills one, a double, in fact. And I'm hopeful that Trent Grisham can at least be an average player offensively. I'm talking a 105 WRC plus, similar to what Ha-Seong Kim did last year. If this guy, and maybe even a little bit better, if Trent Grisham can be a guy with a 220 batting average, 330, 320 on base, and hits 20 bombs, I'll take it because the defense is really important, and he passes that in spades, as evidenced by his Gold Gloves that are very earned and whatnot. There were some unfortunate things in this game in terms of bad luck on the Padres side. A ground out from Juan Soto. It was one of the hardest hit balls of the day, 105 miles per hour. And then the biggest one, a flyout from Matt Carpenter, 104.6 miles per hour off the bat. That was really unfortunate. To center field, it looks like he was about to tie the game back when the score was in reach, when it was 5-2. That back then when that happened, great beautiful swing there. If there's anything to be encouraged, is it looked really cool, and that had an expected batting average of 720. So they did get pretty unlucky there, unfortunately. The Juan Soto thing, it was just really it was hard. Hold on. It was hit really hard, not necessarily the best ball, but specifically the Matt Carpenter hit was unfortunate. Trent Grisham also had a line out at one point in his second at bat. Again, he hit the ball hard, which was good. 103.1 miles per hour. That was nice to see. But for the majority of this game, it's not like they got crazy unlucky. There's just a couple of them, and then the Matt Carpenter hit. So yeah, look, I'm like really overanalyzing, talking about this game a lot, but what can I say? I'm excited to talk about games again. It's great that opening day is back, and I imagine there might be some fans and listeners and viewers that might say, well, why are you not more upset? Well, because this is what happened last year, and this is a Padres team that, while it has more expectations, you just have to remember that baseball can be really weird. You have to remember that there's an extra playoff spot, and you have to remember that you can't build these things like a fantasy team. Just because everything looks good on paper does not mean that it will translate, and I think that that's been my big scare. So if there's anything for you to take away from today's podcast, my number one thing that I did say during the offseason, aside from the pitching depth, which I think can come to fruition. We'll see how that goes, but for me, it's the amount of different positions here. Ha-Seong Kim has some things to get used to, hopefully, at second base, and hopefully he does it well. Jacob Cronenworth, I didn't talk about him. Jacob Cronenworth, I didn't talk about him much. Whatever. Had a couple bad dribblers, had a really poor strikeout. Just not a great game for him overall. I'm hoping that he gets better and returns to his previous 2021, 2020 form. I don't know if that's going to happen. If it doesn't, he's still a solid player, but I would really like if the bottom of this Padres lineup, showed a little bit of meat to it, a little bit more oomph to it, I should say. And a lot of that's going to come down to guys like Cronenworth, guys like Matt Carpenter, guys like Ha-Seong Kim and David Dahl and whatnot, and Trent Grisham, in fairness. I know Grisham was good in this first game, but he's going to be another guy that needs to step up. So yeah, we'll have to see for sure, guys. But speaking of a long season, and speaking of just not everything on paper, you know what I mean? You got to be careful with how these things transpire and whatnot, guys. It's important to keep an eye on? FanDuel. You know why? Because it's going to be a long baseball season, and they've got you covered with all the all the, what's the word I'm looking for? All the good rates and the good kind of parlays. There we go. That's the word that I was looking for. They got you covered over there. And I don't know if you guys heard, but the NCAA tournament got the women's final today, or semifinals today. I'm really excited about that. You got the men's as well. That's going to be really fun. I know Caitlin Clark is literally taking the nation by storm. I will be watching that. That's going to be a blast. And then, of course, you got baseball heating up. So they've got you covered there. It's going to be a lot of fun, guys. Get in on the action. America's #1 sportsbook. That's right. I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at the numbers right now. #1. That's because right now, FanDuel is offering new customers a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and sign up today to claim your no-sweat first bet. Then you can wager on everything from the money line to point spreads to which team will be cutting down the net or which team will be hoisting that World Series trophy, whatever you want to look at. You want to put some money on Manny Machado MVP? You want to put on some money on, I don't know, some random Angels-A's game because the Angels hate Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani. So at the time, let me see at the time of this recording if they lost. Hold on one second. I'm just curious. I can't see if they lost or not. Yes, they did 2-1. That's funny. Anyway, so if you want to bet on the A's to beat the poor Angels and Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout, you can do that. And you can do all the, parlays and whatnot as well. On an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up for $1,000 when you join for your no sweat first bet. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook betting partner of Locked On and the NBA. Pretty cool stuff. We're in the waning moments of today's podcast, guys. And I don't have too much more to say. But I wanted to end the podcast kind of talking about some positives. For one, it's just great to have baseball back. Really amped. Loved the energy of Petco Park. It was electric. I actually missed the opening ceremony stuff because I've been watching NBA lately, and the NBA games, they'll say starts 7:30 or whatever, and it really doesn't. They start at 7:50. And I stupidly thought that was going to kind of happen with the Padres, where I was like, all right, East Coast time, 9:40. I'll put it on at 9:45, 9:40, around that time, right? So I'm watching my Avatar: The Last Airbender, and instead I was like, wait a minute. I'm seeing pictures from the game. What's going on? I'm so dumb. It's baseball. They start earlier with that. So I'm going to try and see that sometime today to see all that stuff. But I imagine it must have been electric during then too. That was really cool. And it's really cool to see all these new faces and whatnot. And I imagine that Padres fans are just super excited for the rest of the season. The other positive, though, is from a playing thing, and that's Xander Bogaerts. 3 for 4 in this game with 3 hits, 2 doubles, and 1 single to start things off. His first at-bat as a Padre goes for a double, which is awesome. He does have a strikeout later. Whatever, it happens. I think this is a perfectly good time to bring up. Xander Bogaerts has scared me just a little bit this season. Only because just some overall numbers, his BABIP was really high, batting average on balls in play. The fact that he only hit 15 home runs for the Red Sox last year. The fact that, just overall, we've seen a lot of guys struggle when they change leagues. Francisco Lindor was one of the comparisons I made. His first year with the Mets offensively was really messy and bad. So I wondered, could that happen for Xander Bogaerts? Could the defense maybe not be there? We didn't get really a display of his defense as much, so I don't really have much to commentate on that and whether or not that's going to carry over from last year, which was his peak defensive year after years of being, kind of mediocre in that spot. But in terms of the hitting, it was a good reminder that the home runs isn't everything, right? And this is a guy who's going to lace doubles, hopefully split the gap. That's really cool, and you saw that in this game, and that's really exciting and fun. So Xander Bogaerts was definitely the highlight of the night for me. The Trent Grisham double was also a highlight for me, just because it's so funny that he starts off his season that way. That's really great. So really excited about that. I'm curious to see what the lineup is going to be for tomorrow, because tomorrow's game, the Padres are going to really want to bounce back in this one. It's going to be another night game. It's expected to be Kyle Freeland for the Rockies, I believe, and then maybe Nick Martinez for the Padres. Again, the rotation's a little bit weird right now because Yu Darvish, a little bit of a trying to get back into the swing of things, WBC, the schedule's a little bit off, so that's part of it as well, and then Musgrove's on the IL. So Nick Martinez, I'm curious to see how he does as a starter, but I imagine a lot of Padres fans are going to be like, oh no, our second starter of the season is Nick Martinez? Well, hey, he's a capable pitcher. I just think he's better as a bullpen guy, and I think it's going to be interesting. I actually wrote for it Just Baseball in my kind of series preview, as I realize now I've been keeping the FanDuel thing on way too long on this thing. My bad, guys, getting used to a new recording setup. That over at Just Baseball, I wrote about how, Adrian Morejon could be a good bullpen guy. He got placed on the 60-day IL. Again, the Morejon Hive, I was part of you. Don't worry, I was with you, and it unfortunately doesn't go their way. So that's probably an option that might not necessarily happen. But we'll see. It might be Michael Wacha. I don't know. As of what I'm looking at right now, I'm seeing Nick Martinez. I'm going to pull up my app and just see if there's anything on Twitter that confirms it. But look, man, not the greatest beginning to the Padres season, but hopefully they can come out for today's game and just really just ball out and look a lot better and just be a little bit more focused. But I will say, again, the defense, the starting pitching, the bullpen, there were a lot of things that months from now, if someone tells you that the Padres were a mess and that they, fell off and that they were a huge disappointment, this game is kind of a little bit of a microcosm, a little bit of a preview of what could potentially happen. Not to sound alarmist or anything. It's still the overreaction episode, but those are my concerns. And again, it really stinks. You saw the Dodgers beat a really exciting young D-backs team 8-2. I joked on the season preview. I've been joking on Twitter. I used the Kendall Roy meme from Succession. This is the day his reign ends. But I really am a little bit put off by how many people have just thrown the Padres into the top spot in baseball, including this esteemed publication. One of our writers think that they're the number one team in baseball. And for me, I get it. But I just think that you have to give some credit to some of these other teams that are a little bit more established, like your Atlanta, like your New York Mets, like your Dodgers. I hate to admit it, guys, but it's true. And, Miguel Vargas, who I've been terrified, he has a good game the other day. 2 walks, he gets a hit. Like, they have some guys, and I know that Trey Turner left them, but you still have to keep in mind that there's more to baseball than just stacking stars and trading all your assets away. And sometimes it might not fully go the way that you want it to be. Again, it's still such a long season. There's going to be games where the Padres put up like 9 runs and none of this stuff might even matter, right? But I am concerned a little bit in terms of my same concerns are still there, I should say. And they weren't going to leave even if they had won last night's game, but it's still worth bringing up, I think, overall for this team. But the good thing is that it was a fun game still because it's opening day, and I'm really glad that baseball is back. Maybe it was the ominous start because of the rain delay. We should have known. They were like, oh, we're going to torture the Padres fans with this really ominous looking cloud over center field for part of the game, especially the beginning. But again, not overreacting to Snell. This is what he does. But overall, I will say pretty crummy start to the season, especially against the Rockies. I don't know what it is. They make the Rockies look like the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. They really do. So hopefully they win this next couple games. And in terms of just the future of this show, real quick, going to be recapping on Monday the next bunch of games that the Padres play, obviously. Just going to be giving my thoughts on that and Martinez and maybe Michael Wacha. Hopefully they win and don't get totally embarrassed in this series. And then they start off against the D-backs probably on Tuesday. Going to have a nice little crossover with my buddy Miller Thomas because we always like doing crossovers. That's what we do. Whenever the Snydog of the Dodgers host stops running away from me, I'll try and get a podcast crossover done with him. But still, lots of fun stuff, guys. Maybe talk about pitching rotation stuff later on. It's going to be a really good season, and it is now officially oh my God, is it my 4th season doing this show? 2020, 2021, 2022. Oh my gosh. This is my 4th season covering this team. Holy. But for everybody who hasn't, followed me before, check me out at Javapeno. Check out at LO_Padres. Looking forward to covering this team for the rest of the year, both through the good and the bad, and hopefully it's more of the former. But yeah, really good stuff, guys. With that all being said, that about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, the opening day Overreaction Emporium episode of the Locked On Padres podcast. Like I said, at LO_Padres. It is the best pod that isn't the Padres that you'll ever hear. Stay tuned for the next episode on all platforms. I'm really messing up this outro, but whatever. And until next time, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful, my fire faithful homies. Take care.